getting on. Sat by the fireside, pondering on. Picture book, pictures of your mama, taken by your papa a long time ago. Picture book of people with each other to prove they love each other a long time ago. Picture book, picture book.
Well, another 5 palm tree out of 5 in the weather department on this Saturday afternoon, Saturday, May the 9th here at Gulfstream Park, with very little going on outside currently at about 11:45 in the morning, shortly before 12 noon. But that is a beautiful scene, one of our favorite views, in fact, in all of Florida racing as we get tied on for the upcoming first of 12 on a 12-race Saturday. It's Jason Blewett and Acacia Courtney. Happy to have you along for the ride, everybody, on a big day of racing here at Gulfstream, Acacia.
It certainly is. Looking forward to this afternoon. Not only do we have a 2-year-old race, stakes action with the Sunshine Forever, but Jason and all of you at home, if you haven't heard already, which you probably have, but there's a mandatory payout in today's Rainbow Six, and that pool is expected to be upwards of $6 million.
Lots of money up for grabs, unquestionably, in that mandatory Rainbow Six cash out that'll start in race 7. That does include, and it's a great sequence of races. It really is. It includes our featured ninth, the Sunshine Forever, a real grade 2 caliber stake, and then some will be knocking heads on the turf course a bit later in the afternoon as we move forward. And we do have to tie a ribbon and take care of a little Friday housekeeping in regards to Beat the Expert. We had well over 200 contestants once again, and congratulate Todd, Dennis, and a Courtney in the mix, taking down Ronnie yesterday for that polo shirt.
I like it. It always seems like we're giving away a few polos every week. Beat the Expert will be back next week, and you'll have your chance then if you didn't get it this week. But thanks to everybody that played. Jason, I think you're going to be up next week. Is that right?
I am in the ring next week, this coming Friday afternoon. In fact, a card that'll be drawn a bit later today. We have 10 here tomorrow afternoon and another 10 on a Thursday as the spring meet continues and we move towards the second half of May, which is pretty hard to believe. We can believe, though, again, a 12-pack Saturday amid fast and firm conditions, and a couple of pick fives are in the mix as well, and as is standard here on the broadcast, you're going to take a shot at the early one, and we do start, I think, for all intents and purposes, the day with a pretty good, it sounds a little silly because it's a lower-level maiden claiming race in a way, but I don't want people to scoff at the statement saying it's a pretty competitive race. I think 3 or 4 legit contenders in the mix.
And that's why I ended up spreading. I think that's a perfect segue. I went 4 deep in here, even though the number 2 currently, Maito, taking most of the money at 9 to 5 early in the wagering. But I felt, and I agree with you, that there's actually some horses who are pretty evenly matched in this spot. So I wanted a little bit of coverage in here just at this level. You've got some horses who've been close. We'll see who can take that step forward today. 2-year-olds in the mix in race number 2 and 3 deep in there. Looking forward to seeing, of course, the first colt by Nyquist. Breakthrough scratch yesterday, will run today. Todd Pletcher's in the mix with another pricey Constitution as well. 2 deep in the rest of the sequence there. I stepped it up a little bit more than normal today because I did want some coverage in those first 2 races, and hopefully I can pad the bankroll for the Rainbow Six, which starts in race 7.
Definitely in a 310 cash out for you, and that includes the number 3, Poseidon's Princess, who may have landed in a very, very modest spot first time out for Larry Pilati, and quite interesting that Luis Saez does have the mount in that race. I think that would lead to reasonable speculation that Poseidon's Princess is very live in that spot and a must-use if you're playing the early 5 and or early 4, which we hope is the case. Looking at this field, though, I do think the 2, Maito, is the starting point just by virtue of this gelding's consistency up to this point. To me, though, and he's a major player and he deserves to be favored in this spot, I'm a little worried that his races, again, a little bit of a different horse, but much like an Ocean Fire in hindsight in the last race, there's just a sameness with the fact that he runs basically the same race every time, and I worry that somebody might just be a bit better this afternoon.
And the plus side of that is that you know what you're going to get. He's been the favorite in his last couple, and you just kind of felt switching to Safi's barn, dropping in class the last 2 races, and he deserved to be the favorite. You kind of felt like those were races that he really should have performed well in, and he ran fine. He picked up a check in both of them, certainly, but kind of felt like those were the opportunities. Now, I imagine a similar thought process for you. Jack Beanstalk just has speed. That was kind of the thing that pushed him over the edge for me. And these horses just kind of have that chug-along style.
Yeah, I want somebody forwardly placed, and for me and you, obviously, we had the same thought. Hopefully that's not too much weight for Jack Beanstalk to carry the this afternoon for Norm and Louis, but that running style, I think, may give him a bit of an advantage. At some point, he's probably, and it may happen early, he's going to have to deal with the one took a cab, who may show some speed as well, but this could be a good race for a horse that could get brave towards the first flight as he tries to hold off Maito and the 9 Traffic Trouble and the number 10 Sweet Giant. It's a good matchup between those 4 horses. Let's move on to the second race this afternoon. We go with a cast of 8 following that early scratch and expected scratch of Restored Order, who, as you had mentioned, ran here yesterday, was third in his debut. Now, with this cast of 8, you've got the usual suspects in the mix again, and I think first and foremost, it's really a case where you need to start with the 4 Breakthrough as we get to see Nyquist with his first starter at stud, a colt by Nyquist out of a Storm Creek Dam who brought quite a bit of money at Saratoga, or I should say in Kentucky last July at Facing July of 19, debuting for Wesley, who is now 1 for 6 with his 2-year-olds here this meet here at Gulfstream Park.
Yeah, and I do think that this is one who will still take money, but I think all of us may be thinking, okay, let's pump the brakes a little bit with some of these shorter price 2-year-olds. This is another one. He's a little bit interesting, and my question with him, and I'm looking forward to seeing him, is again that age-old question: is he going to just be ready to go now? Based off of pedigree, the mare was 0 for 3 at 2, but she was actually a pretty good turf runner. She won a couple times on the grass. She's been a nice producer, of course, the most successful of which was Red Vine, who's multiple grade 1 placed. And looking back, it was crazy. I realized he never actually won a graded stake, but he was always kind of right there. And he got better as he got older. So that's going to be my question with Breakthrough. Is he going to be one that's going to improve with age like we've seen in the family? But I have really high hopes for Nyquist as a stallion, seeing a lot of them at the sales. I think they look like runners, and they kind of seem to, he's seeming to carry in Uncle Mo's footsteps as far as a sire goes as well.
Well, I forgot. I had talked about it yesterday in one of my Twitter videos at just how great Nyquist was up through the Kentucky Derby. In fact, wrapped up his 2-year-old season unbeaten and was unbeaten through his Kentucky Derby win. His first loss was against Exaggerator in that sloppy track Preakness. So good luck with the Nyquist in the breeding shed, and we'll see how these sons of Uncle Mo now do in the breeding shed now that they're stallions themselves, horses like Nyquist and Outwork. And speaking of Uncle Mo, you've got the connections of that horse in the mix with Rapoli Stable and Todd hooking up with our top selection, the number 8 Hyper Focus, who's a colt by Constitution, who I had heard was a little bit better than the one that ran here yesterday in Restored Order.
Yeah, absolutely. And I had heard that Restored Order did have some of his own questions as well. And we saw that on the racetrack, and maybe now with some experience, he will move forward too. But I mean, what a breakout year last year for Constitution, and into this year as well with 3-year-olds. He really has been able to kind of stamp some really precocious runners, and it is fun. I know you believe this as well, to see Todd with now stallions that he had formerly trained and seeing him have a lot of success with them. So I kind of went with that win early pedigree angle and just the already proven success of Constitution.
And Mike Yates in the mix with a 1-2 punch, including the 9 Pepe, who got in as an also eligible coming out of the Gatsby Golden Pal race, which obviously produced yesterday's second race winner in Just Right Mike. We'll see if Lightning can strike twice for that barn out of the same race at about 12:30, or I should say 1:30 this afternoon, or about 1 o'clock, give or take. Let's move on to the third, everybody, this afternoon. A 3-and-up filly mare, $40,000 to $30,000 claimer, going a 2-turn mile on the turf. At a race occasion, I think first and foremost, a really big percentage and chunk of the firepower landed way outside. And I mean, the first you're obviously alluding to with that statement is the Todd drop down with the rod and the 12 Cat Lady. But right next door to her is your top selection, Enduracura, who has been nearly as good and productive in her special weight tries for trainer Michelle Nihei.
That's my kind of hope with and I'm I don't know if any of us are going to do well with the name. It means difficult to cook in French, so we'll see if this one dropping for the first time is able to get the money today. Obviously, she's had I feel like she and Cat Lady have a little bit of a similar kind of past performance look to them as well, in that 2 starts back, if you remember, this filly just had an absolutely nightmare trip, really taking the worst of it in that race. And last time out, she showed a lot more speed. I think Chris Landeros has been on a good run lately. We'll see if he can get this one home and taking that drop. And poor Cat Lady just has not had luck with the post position draw.
She has not. They pull out the stops here. I mean, Mike Rapoli, not the kind of guy that's just going to waste his time. He likes to run aggressive. He likes to run horses that are favored. He likes to win races. So no more special weight tries for the time being for Cat Lady, who's in for the 40,000 from way outside. The other key contender as we move on to the next race is the 6, Mariposa Belle. Quietly, I'll tell you, Hall of Fame trader Roger Atfield's been on a good run.
Absolutely has. I think that she's got a shot in here, too. Another one dropping in class for the first time. Could be interesting with the blinkers on if she shows a little bit more speed.
As we stay on the turf for race number 4, Saturday's 4th race, a 3-up filly mare, $16,000 claimer. Like the first race, has a Safi trained favorite in this one in the number 6, Sandrift, who we both took a small shot against this afternoon. And my feeling and my opinion of Sandrift, who just with her consistency is going to be favored, and she's unequivocally the filly to beat in this race. But boy, how many chances as a favorite again are you going to give her here, one short price after another?
I totally agree, and it's one of those cases where you respect her, and she has to be in the mix, just given how well she's run. But her last 5 races, in fact, have been in the money finishes, and it's tough because she always does take attention at the window, so you know she's going to be a shorter price. And I, like you, felt that this was a good opportunity to maybe go for a little bit somebody else. I took the 3rd off the layoff runner with Too Much War for Danny Gargan, who won last time out, wiring the field. Just seemed like she really kind of put everything together, and the race did produce 2 next out winners.
Well, that's good. She got a good ride from Louis, didn't have to run all that fast early in that race and was able to hold on, and maybe she's even a bit better 3rd back off that lengthy layoff that you had noted. And she has a comparable running style to my top pick in the 1, Algo Donald, who's down on the rail for Mary Epler. I feel as though this filly is just simply better as a speed horse. And this race to me looked somewhat bereft on paper in the early speed department. Maybe she's the one that just could control getting, I think, a key rider switch to a Misael.
I agree there for sure. And also, Misael's ridden this horse when she was with Jose D'Angelo and rode her very well to a lot of success. So I think she's interesting. That I actually thought the same thing as far as the pace did go as well, and that's taking Too Much War. Wanted to quickly mention Dana Grace, who with an outside post ran sneakily very, very well, or maybe not too sneaky, but very well last time out in her first turf race in a while.
Feels like the Mucho Machos have been okay on the turf.
Yeah, they have. I agree. I agree.
And every other horse Kathy runs for the Reeves Thoroughbred Racing family, of course, Patty and Dean, seems to be by Mucho Macho Man, a major player, switching over to Edgard from a much better post this afternoon in a race, again, very much centered around Sandrift, but you may want to tread a little lightly with her going off the favorite, and a clear favorite yet again. Here's the 5th race. Very tricky cash out to this early pick 5, Acacia. You went 3-10 in this race, and in a way, maybe just the presence of Louis being on your top pick, the number 3 Poseidon's Princess, that might be the pivot or at least jump-off point to this race, because needless to say, it won't take a huge effort from a well-meant firster to just beat this field.
That was kind of my thinking with this one, and it just seems like it's a pretty manageable spot for a first-time starter to debut. I got lucky with the Larry Pilati horse a couple weeks ago off a trainer switch with Louis up. This one's not going to be such a price. I think this one, kind of sticks out like a sore thumb in this race, and maybe it is a little bit of a trap, but I just didn't really feel confident about anybody else in this field.
I hear you. I'm giving a small look here, slight edge to the 6th Anita, whose form has been okay in context to this field.
Sure.
I'm thinking less distance. She's got race day experience and less distance today. as she turns back to 3/4. Maybe that wakes her up because she has run okay when compared to horses that have run a couple of times in this race. It's her and the number 1, Socially Astray. Maybe she's got the best recent form, but man, she's already had the 13 races.
And maybe Socially Astray, social paranoia, and your social distancing is where your hunchbacks go today.
That's a very good point. We've got Mr. Social Paranoia coming up as the favorite for sure, I think, in the featured 9th race. As we check out, speaking of Social Paranoia, we check out one more race before we take our first time out here on Gulfstream Park today. And just like Social Paranoia, you've got Todd Pletcher in the mix, setting out, I think, the favorite in this one, and a horse that I picked in the 4 Riggins. Forgot to send in this stat, but Todd's second out with special weight to maiden claimers. He's gone 29 for his last 82. That is a 35% strike rate. And although this horse didn't do all that much running first time out, I like the race that he's coming out of, won by Express Faro here a few weeks ago.
I think that was a very strong field, and yeah, it's true, he really didn't run a step, and he was also a bit of a price in there for a Pletcher first-time starter too, and especially given the pedigree. Liam's Map, he's half to Cece, who's a multiple Grade 1 winner now, half to Papa Clem, so he's got quite a pedigree on him as well. He certainly has every opportunity to move forward, and if you're a Friday Night Lights fan, maybe one to look at as well. I kind of took the rematching horses to the outside. I just preferred these. Thinking, especially Reconvene, showed just a little bit more life in his debut.
Oh, his turf debut was an excellent effort. In fact, we're going to backtrack to the far turn run of his April 17th race, along with the Bilmont-trained Eagles Palace, who's in and among, covered up between horses in the middle of the pack. The horse to really watch, though, is Acacia's pick in this one, Reconvene, in those classic purple New Farm silks. Look at the pace in the upper right, 21-4 and 45-1, 3/4 and 110-1. This was a blistering pace in this race that ultimately just melted down the speeds, and the fact that he was in that first flight and even spurted and kicked on a giant effort first time out for this colt.
That was one thing I really liked. You could maybe see early on the number 1, King of Rock, who had been the runaway long shot pace setter, and Reconvene was, as you said, in that second flight, and he was the first one to take over the lead when King of Rock kind of stopped. And the fact that he held on as well as he did, especially as a first-time starter, I was really encouraged by that. I actually like these two coming out of that race. Eagles Palace had a little bit more of the closing chance, but it was also a race off a layoff for him.
As we take a little break here into a layoff of sorts, our first time out here on Gulfstream today, back with the mandatory rainbow after this. Well, we've passed 12 noon. The sun is shining. Blue sky for as far as you can see. Basically a straight shot eastward out to the Atlantic Ocean. That infield lake, blue and just looking pretty refreshing on a warm afternoon here as we are fast and firm, and we transfer from that beautiful pan shot to our respective studios. I'm upstairs at our clubhouse studio. Acacia's downstairs, paddock side. As we gear up Acacia again, we are well into it on this 12-race Saturday, a big one here at Gulfstream.
Yeah, it certainly is, and we have a mandatory payout in today's Rainbow Six. Pool expected to be upwards of $6 million, and I mean, every time we have that mandatory, always going to be well bet for sure. So hopefully can try to get a little bit of luck this afternoon. I did take a shot at the sequence, and I went with $115.20 play. Little obviously stepped it up from normal because it is a mandatory payout. We all did Rainbow Six videos. You can go and check them out on YouTube, and if you need a little bit of a backtrack here, some thoughts specifically more on this sequence. And my tactic, Jason, was not getting kicked out in the first leg, though I didn't use compensate, and that's the one I'm nervous about, but I just preferred some of the others in here. I felt the 11th race was also a spread. In the race 9, that's our Sunshine Forever, with War of Will out, who I didn't like on top anyway in this spot, but I think it really dramatically changes the pace as Grand Motion's horse is out. Halliday, in my mind, could get comfortable on the front end, leaving a very strong hand for Todd Fletcher with him in Social Paranoia.
Definitely, Todd, a very, again, strong hand, maybe holding a couple of aces. And Halliday, I still feel as though we have not seen his best, and Social Paranoia was just so good off the layoff, winning on the Florida Derby undercard. You've got a couple of horses in the 10th race. Pretty big spread in that 11th race field, in fact, 1, 3, 4, and 5. And then as we close things down, the last race complicated things for me, both in the Rainbow and the late pick 5, because I just don't trust. He's a must-use, but I just don't trust the 3, Pepe the
No, me
Hunter,
neither.
which, if he takes a step back today for a new barn, that may really open that race up to maybe a handful of horses.
I agree. I like the Robert at double-digit odds on the inside, so I'm going to see if I can get that one at a bit of a price,
too.
but that's a very tricky race.
It definitely is.
Yeah.
Now, 2, 3, 5, 9, Acacia spread as we have Ronnie's ticket. We'll see how many he used in the first leg of today's mandatory payout. In fact, he went 3 deep, a ticket clocking in at about $195, and just looking to see who he used in our featured 9th. He's got the 2 Todds along with the number 11 Admission Office, who's been pretty good. And I guess the good news with Admission Office is he has run well. I think he's better going longer, but at least I guess the comforting fact is he has run some big races at a mile out to a mile and a 16th.
And I think he's really just been facing monster competition last couple of races against Zulu Alpha. Not that he made a layup by any means of the imagination today, but he has been running against some really tough turf horses.
All right, $1.94 at 40 cents for Ronnie's ticket as we talk about this opening leg, and Ronnie is every bit of the 3, 5, and 10. And I think 2/3 of Ronnie's ticket to start is a big part of the narrative in looking at this Rainbow Six opener. And you've got the 5 Foolish Humor and the 10 Compensate coming out of the Melody of Colors, and it's a race we are going to check out now. Now, I'm curious to see what the Wesley Ward horse does, and that's Foolish Humor. Compensate, meanwhile, had the dream trip and got a great ride from Edgar Prado, tucked away in the pocket, and will run a very good second. That horse, I think, a logical contender switching to Louis today. The real, I think, key to this rematch here is, do we get, Acacia, a Foolish Humor that quite simply, after going to Royal Ascot and having not run since the middle of September, does she really improve off this race, or was she just one of those precocious 2-year-olds that won't come back as a 3-year-old?
I think today's really going to be a good test for it. It's a really good point to bring up because we'll get a chance to see it's absolutely possible that she just won early, won fast, and then she just hasn't been able to carry that on as kind of the rest of the crop catches up with her, especially now as a 3-year-old. It's also possible that she looked a bit flat to me in the stretch last time out, so it's also possible that now a race off the layoff, she'll move forward, and also her second race here in Florida after shipping down south. So I thought that she could potentially be a little bit of a player in here, and I took a different stand. I didn't really prefer the Melody of Colors in here, though I respect the running that both of those horses have done, and I was probably too hard on Compensate because she did run very well, but I just have really had my heart set on Envied, and I picked her last time when she was a price, and she just ran so well, and she looked to me kind of a similar kind of tale, like now as a 3-year-old, maybe sprinting was really what she needed to do, and also getting a break from Stakes Company, ran really well off the bench last time.
She is, because I'm obviously in the camp of the Melody of Colors, she is, to me, hands down the only other horse, maybe not the only other horse, but I think she's the real danger. If one of those Melody of Colors fillies gets beat this afternoon, I think it's Envied. And I'll tell you, it looked to me like a Misael wanted to get her outside earlier than he was able to, and perhaps that did take away from her closing kick, or at least her finish. Not sure if she would have beaten Poseidon's Passion, who wired the field, but a very good 3-year-old debut out of Envied. And we do have to mention, and I'll be really interested to hear what you have to say pre-race following the post-parade with the Euro in the mix here, the French-bred aficionado, whose first time Patrick B. and Cohn getting very firm ground in her U.S. debut.
Yeah, and it's interesting because she's running some good races actually in Europe. Europe, and it looks like she actually has shown a bit more speed in those European races, which would be the type of form you'd have to imagine that could transfer well here to the U.S. Want to give a quick mention, though, to the 3 fast scene. She's, I think, a little bit of a wild card in here. She's already a stakes, multiple stakes winner, in fact, and she's been running up at Woodbine. We haven't seen her since Keeneland, but she did some good things up in Canada. Could be interesting as well.
It is funny how she beat in the Caress Stakes up there last mid-September in 19. She faced and beat Foolish Humor fair and square. It's kind of neat.
True.
They're rematching, kind of a random rematch, but nonetheless, I mean, what are the odds they both show up here on this Saturday, May the 9th? But a good opening leg to the Rainbow Six. As we turn the page, we'll start Saturday's late pick 5. We'll do so on the main track. Pretty notable scratch in this race, and I've got the favorite, who I scratched into, the 5 Louis Kingdom, who I'm comfortable with. Don't fully trust him. I'm curious how he's going to run off a big drop at a reclaim for Larry Ravelli. I've also got the 7 Acertico, whose form has not been lighting the world on fire, and he is in for the lowest claiming price of his career. Too deep, perhaps, depending upon your stance, a little light to start. I guess speaking of being light, you could call me pretty confident in Social Paranoia and wanting some coverage for the 50-cent minimum. I just opted to go alone with him off such a strong race in the Appleton, and and it's a race we're going to look at in a few seconds here on the show, but I just think Acacia, for a horse who was a real overachiever last year, he may have ultimately tipped his hand as more of a mile, maybe out to a mile and a furlong turf horse in 2020 for Todd Pletcher.
It could be, and I was really wondering if that mile Appleton was just too short for him, and he was very far back. My question today is the pace setup he's going to get, but I will take nothing away from him, and I will say physically last time, I mean, he was about as striking and impressive you could be, especially off of a layoff like that.
And I'd imagine he's a horse, not to jump the gun, but you got to see quite often. I mean, up and down the East Coast, or at least on the New York circuit
He's
between
well traveled.
Belmont and Saratoga for sure. So that's good to hear. He's come back physically, and obviously the proof was in the pudding. Can he have a big encore performance this afternoon? We'll see for Todd. Todd does not have a horse in this opening leg of the late pick 5, but we do have that aforementioned number 5, Louis Kingdom, off a reclaim and a pretty big drop for Larry Ravelli. The speed won me over, although at some point he's going to have to put away a long shot in the 3, Cat Gone Quick. I didn't know where else to go in this race. That's my honest opinion.
No, I totally agree with you, and I feel like this is a logical one. There's every reason to believe that he should run well in here, especially given the fact that he is a reclaim and he's got a Rad Ortiz. I looked at this race for a long time and finally landed on Harper Go Lucky, who I was hoping would be a bit of a price. May not be such a price now that Reserve Not Attained is out, because I felt like he was one of the other logical kind of other horses in here. But I'm hoping the drop in class with Marcos Meneses is just going to help him to move forward back on the main track. And I mean, look, this is a hard race. If you're looking just at, best race form, Louis Kingdom is the one that's got it.
Oh, if he's on his A game, he will beat this field, and it may not be close. He's got some questions of his own to answer. We'll see how your horse does, and it is an easier spot all around with the scratch of the 8, Reserve Not Attained. Let's move on to the featured 9th. We're up in class, and as we've been saying, this is more or less a Grade 2 stake, masquerading as a $75,000 stake on this Saturday. Just a really salty field, even with that expected scratch late yesterday afternoon of the Preakness winner, War of Will. You've got, though, 3 or 4 or even 5 major players who have had big careers in their own right, but just looking at Social Paranoia's run, and we'll pick up his 4-year-old debut in the Appleton, and I had liked him off his 3-year-old form in this race, but it was a real nagging question. Would he be able to run well going a mile, turning in such a stark turn back in distance? I mean, by Street Boss, he ran and looked like a cold-blooded capo in this race. I mean, the way he just closed down everybody, and man, I just watched that acceleration. I said, maybe Todd's got a really nice turf miler for 2020 mile, like I said, out to a mile and a furlong. I like him coming back.
Yeah, he ran huge. And I'll be honest, I had him on top originally, and I ended up switching to Halliday with the scratches because I really feel like it dramatically changed the overall layout of the race. War of Will was going to be on the engine early, and I felt like Regally Irish was going to be the other speed horse. El Tormenta has some speed. That didn't really work out for him last time out in the Appleton, and I wonder if he's maybe going to be one that will send as well. And there will be speed needed for Social Paranoia, but I thought his last race was absolutely sensational. Again, he looked the part as well. And I agree with you that we haven't really seen the best of Halliday yet, and I was wondering, again, what kind of trip he would pull in here. But he's one that seems to be moving like this as well, and Todd holds, I think, a super strong hand in this race. But last couple of races, you cross out the Tampa one, but the last few races here at Gulfstream for Halliday have been exceptionally strong, and he's got a much better post than he did in those 2 recent Gulfstream races as well.
10 out of 10 last time going a mile. It didn't matter, though. He broke, took the lead, got the good ride from Louis, and wired the field in a big figure victory. Right next to him, in fact, splitting the 2 Todd horses in the gate, will be the returning Jimmy Toner horse, who is absolutely a major part of the conversation here in the 7 Hawkish. Still feel a little bit bad, and Jimmy will elaborate as we bring up our Sunshine Forever quote book about this horse just not really being able to get into a good groove. As Jimmy told me, his last breeze was absolutely great, and that's the work we're looking at alongside Celebration, who he absolutely buries in this turf workout up at Palm Meadows. We've had some hiccups along the way, but if we could just get him into a good rhythm, I think he could have a very good year. It's not like he's a horse that can't run off a layoff. He's very handy. And man, as a 3-year-old turf horse, I mean, how good was Hawkish? He's got a lot of talent, this horse.
Yeah, he certainly is. And I know he had some time off to kind of take a step back as far as issues that he had that had been nagging him. And seeing how well he's been training in the morning, I mean, very encouraging to feel like those things have kind of been resolved and he's going to be able to come back. It's crazy to think he's now a 5-year-old because I know we were all with our mouths on the floor in his debut here at Gulfstream where he was green but just obviously had an unbelievable turn of foot and won the Penn Mile doing that as well. I think this mile and a 16th is really his best distance, and it's not an easy comeback race for him, but he's a I think super talented horse. And a stat I didn't send in either, but wanted to mention Jimmy Toner with 180 plus day layoff on the turf is 4 for 20 winning and 6 for 20 in the money. So there's horses have been able to come back and run solidly, and you have to imagine they're only going to move forward after that.
Definitely. Jimmy, a longtime master on the turf. We've got Brian Lynch, too, with the 11 admission office. This horse, to me, defines a turf overachiever. Just a hard hitter who doesn't always get bet, but always seems, for the most part, to show up with a big race. I still, though, think he's better beyond the mile and a 16th against a field of this caliber at this stage of his career.
And I remember actually picking him in the Dixie next to be over Catholic Boy last year, and it seemed like that was kind of the start of him being close and just not able to really be able to get it done. I agree. I think he's a little bit better going longer, but again, the company he's faced lately has been top-notch.
Yeah, no Zulu Alpha in the field this afternoon, that's for sure. But a very nice cast from top to bottom in the Sunshine Forever. On the turf for the 10th as we move on to the final pick 3 on the afternoon, and a race that is probably very much in the corner, at least starting, of the very consistent, always hard-hitting, and just very resilient Battle of Blenheim, who just makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, he certainly does. And I felt comfortable just using 2 horses in here. I had the speed of Battle of Blenheim, and then I had a closer who was shooting the breeze, second off the layoff. I felt like I kind of had my tactics covered in here, but I do think it's encouraging that Battle of Blenheim has just been really, really sharp lately.
And I think most of us are under the impression that shooting the breeze off that wide trip, he had been gone for about 5.5 months on the sidelines. He's supposed to move forward this afternoon when you've got Graham calling the shots off that good return, sneaky good return with a very wide trip. I think he moves forward like you do, and we'll see who proves best in the 10th. Let's move on to the 11th. This will be our 10th race is our our turf finale on the afternoon. We've got a main track late double on this Saturday afternoon, and no shortage of early speed in this race when looking at the potential matchup on the engine here between the 4 I'll Fight Dempsey and the Michael Yates sprinter towards the outside and Whiskey Sunrise. I still wanted to go back, although it's 2 back and not the last out effort for the 4 I'll Fight Dempsey. I wanted to go back and revisit this horse's first win and first start back on Fountain of Youth Day, February 29th. A legitimately good effort against Candy Machine in the Brandt colors with the neon and Hunter Green, who's about second now. In fact, clear-cut second, and would lose this race, but come back to break his maiden very impressively. I think ultimately, Acacia, 7 last time out for I'll Fight Dempsey just proved a bit too far for him.
Yeah, that could certainly be fair as well. And I didn't quite know what to do with him because I thought that he certainly faced a nice one. Sonneman ran very well last time out. I mean, it was just so easy the way he did it in his debut, and it looked like moving forward that was going to be kind of a pretty key horse to keep an eye on, especially with horses coming from behind him to win, and especially Candy Machine's impressive next out win. It just almost, and maybe the 7 was too long for him. It just felt a little bit flat to me last time. So I need to kind of see him take that next step forward. But I will say his debut was sensational. If he runs back to that, he's a major, major player in here. I took a new shooter, though, and a horse that I also think will just be happy to get back to 6 furlongs. He is off a layoff, but very sharp workout at Palmettos recently and Tap It to win. 2 races before the layoff were in obviously super tough company and just a no-go. But again, I think sprinting is where he's going to be happiest.
You know the talent's there somewhere with him. I mean, he was cut out to be a top 2-year-old and tried the best of his generation, certainly in the Breeders' Futurity, and went sideways in that race in the street sense. He is absolutely a huge player coming back, and he may land in a great trip if I'll Fight Dempsey can't put away the other speed horse who I put second, Whiskey Sunrise. Could get really a tough duel towards the front of the pack, and that may set the race up for somebody to win from slightly off the pace. It sounds like you and I landed on the same horse in the last race here as we close down the early show here before we send it up to Pete for the scratches. Yep, we both took Guadalupe. I want Lupe Preciado with the Robert, whose dirt race is out of town in this field, not fully trusting the number 3 horse, Pepe the Hunter, with the new barn and his form that's just been so good over his last few. I felt as though the Robert would run a good race here.
I agree with you, and he does have a win over the track here at Gulfstream. It's actually a little bit of a homecoming. I remember when he started his career, I think Eddie Keneally had him at the beginning. And so a little bit coming back to South Florida, this barn has been sending out some well-meant horses here in Florida, and he's got Joel Rosario up, and we'll see what kind of price we get, but I know it'll be a little bit higher than Pepe the Hunter.
Yes, Pepe the Hunter for sure, but it's hard to argue with his recent form. Has a look a little bit of like Enlisting, who I incorrectly thought might be over the top and take a step back yesterday. He's been good with good figures and a very logical player and deserving favorite. You've got a mare in the race, the 11 She Takes Heart, who's got some speed as well for trainer Barry Croft.
Yeah, she does, and though she's facing the boys in here, she's been really consistent, and I felt like she could potentially grab a share, and I am intrigued by the Queen's Jewels, who gets back to the main track where she won 2 starts back, though against Lesser.
Has a rod in the nightcap. Going to be a nice price with a rod as well.
Yeah.
All
We'll
right.
see if I get it.
As we send it up, not a price, one of our favorites, Pete Aiello, coming up next with those Saturday scratches and changes.